Hello, everyone. Welcome to another video of the Catcher's Book Club. I forgot the name of the book club because it's been that long ago. I'm Nats. This is Becca, and this is Johnny, and today we will be talking to you about Shiver, which was our book of a couple months. Let's just put it that way. It was a book we read over several months, but it was a book that we read. It was a very autumnal read, and we are here for that today. And we'll start off with the very common question of what did you think about the book? First of all, let's summarize the book quickly in like 3 sentences. What did you get out of it? And then what was your favorite and least favorite part of it?
Do you want to go first, Becca?
I guess this is a not a very fair summary, but it's what I've got jumping into my head. It is Twilight with werewolves, but with way better writing and people that actually feel like people most of the time. My favorite part was probably just when Sam and Grace first meet and everything is revealed. I liked the setup really a lot. My least favorite part is probably the ending, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. Not the very ending, but how a certain problem is resolved. I think you can probably guess which one. So I'm curious to see what others think.
So far, it's the non-spoilery bit, so just in case people want to like watch the first 3 minutes. But yeah, I would summarize it as werewolves, but science, and the emotion of falling in love for the first time. Like, this book encompasses that feeling, whether it is, you know, portrayed the right way, but it's the feeling of like falling in love the first time. I think that's kind of like what this book encompasses. My personal favorite favorite part of it is a very particular scene in the middle of the book, which I might even quote, and that's a certain candy, like a sweet shop, when they walk in and Grace breathes in, and there's this description of like them standing in the candy store or like the bakery, and it's just like, wow, that's my favorite scene of all time. And the ending for me probably is also my least favorite part. I do think that this book suffers from early book / book 1 of a trilogy syndrome. That's just how it is. Like, that's my take.
For myself, I, as you said, summarize it in a few words. Steamy teen drama in back country, you know, middle of nowhere land, where there's not much going on, so everyone knows everyone, kind of thing. And teenage love story, but of the strange kind. It had its moments. I liked it, and I loved Maggie's writing. So even though you could tell it was some of her older work, it was still. I love the way that she's able to describe or do scene setting, even if you're traveling through a scene, you know, even if it's like it's in the background and the main focus is the dialogue. Still stapled in between, you keep capturing pictures and images, and you're able to place the characters, not just hear them talking in some black void, if you know what I mean. And yeah, best parts I liked. I'm not sure. There wasn't any major moments that stood out for me that was like, oh, that was nice. You know, I sympathized with some of the characters, and I liked.
Can you tell we dragged Johnny into this? Can everybody tell we dragged Johnny into this?
Some of the reveals, and yes, I didn't like the ending so much. But yeah, it's a first book. There's more to come. It's like a 4 series, 4 books, or maybe 3 and 1 sequel or something that they made. So the reason things are left kind of open-ended or unresolved or a bit iffy with the explanations is because there's more. You don't reveal everything, otherwise you've got nothing to write about. So yeah, and obviously I found it like I I can admit I've never read Twilight. 'Cause it's not my
Me neither.
demographic. So, however, I did watch the film and suffered through the films.
Okay, but the film was like,
So I could say if that was the baseline, this was far better in terms of how to do that sort of odd romance of sorts.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. So now, because we're really keen on getting into the juicy bits, if everybody wants to click off and they haven't read the book, please do read it. I think in general, it's really like it's one of my favorite books from like a nostalgia perspective. So I would definitely recommend it. Would you guys recommend it for people who like haven't read it?
For people who like paranormal romance, and particularly, you know, females of a particular demographic, they'll enjoy it a lot. I think if you liked Twilight or anything like Twilight, I think you will enjoy Shiver.
Good. Johnny?
This certainly wasn't my kind of book.
Not the target demographic, Johnny.
But I know I'm not the target demographic, so I was like, I'm going to look at it from a writer's perspective, I guess, or a, you know, take my bias out and just sort of try and enjoy how the story's weaved and stuff. But yeah, definitely recommend it if you love a bit of soppy romance and sort of yeah, I guess magical realism / paranormal type stuff where it's not too absurd because it's kind of set in what you would consider quite normal circumstances.
Science, like a fake science.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not like they're in some kind of different universe or some kind of, you know, alien planet. No, it's very homely in some of the descriptions. It's just slightly magic, slightly
so go
paranormal.
Read it. Because yes. I personally like Maggie, so you know my stance on it. But now we will get into the spoiler part of the review. So everybody buckle in. Well, let's go. Let's give our true opinions. I really want to hear Johnny's, because Johnny at one point over the phone was like, I'm gonna talk about this, and then he's like, no, I'm gonna save it for the video. So we gotta chat about it. But yes, let's go with scenes, because I think one of the strong suits that Maggie has in all of her writing, if you've read any more of her books, I know that Johnny definitely read the Scorpio Races because I gifted it to him, but she's very strong on scene setting. And as we saw in this book, what would be a scene that like what did you think about the way that this book played out, like, and what did you like really really like and really really not like, but you can go like fully in depth about it now that we've gotten the like, oh, let's tiptoe around the details bit.
Do you want me to go first or you? I've got less to say, so
I mean, go ahead. I really want to hear like
okay, from my, I guess, perspective of not so much enjoying the content of the book, but at the same time enjoying the story. I don't know how to put that. It's like I didn't sympathize with their plight because I felt it very soppy at times, or like why decision making wise, and things get little sprinkles and explains about why certain decisions are made, and sometimes like the explanation behind the werewolves, I was kind of like initially like, what's going on? By the end of the book, you kind of go, oh, okay. But it still didn't feel that. It's a lot. I'll leave that bit to the end. But I guess some of the better stuff I enjoyed was it went the path down. Only certain characters knew what was going on, but they didn't then just focus the story entirely around them. They had the kind of moments where they'd be sprinkled back into what is a very unfamiliar or like, you know, unsuspecting world, and there's lots of rumors flying about. So there was like the murders, right, and then people going missing, and I liked the interspersed bits, especially when Grace goes back to school and speaks with Olivia, and it explains like, oh, I've seen Jack, I'm sure of it, and they're like showing pictures and going through different bits, but I sort of enjoyed that because it felt like there's a lot of stories that you read where as soon as the mystery happens, you're drawn into some kind of world where you constantly follow the mystery and not how everything changes around it. Whereas I like the fact that it's kind of like, these people don't know what's going on, but they have some idea there's people missing. You get to see the emotions. It's like, it's a small town, everyone knows everyone, and this kind of thing would have a shock. And I think the shock and the sadness behind that is well illustrated in the writing. You could that it had kind of affected the town or the school in general. And I enjoyed that sort of mystery side of things of Grace knowing a little more about what's going on. It didn't immediately just shun away Olivia and go, okay, look, I think I can explain. I'll help eventually. And I quite liked that. You know, obviously, like, Grace didn't want to compromise or put Sam in danger, but obviously wanted to help Olivia. And Jack's play, and I quite liked that, like, sort of setup at the end, as well as like the whole I don't want to be a werewolf situation. Like,
Yeah, you did.
what is a wolf situation? And poor Jack, you can sympathize with his sort of like, I was quite happy with my life. What's going on? And you know how to fix it. After accidentally spilling the beans that she thinks that she was bitten when she was a kid, and nothing didn't ever happen because she probably had a fever. They kind of go through it. The end bit, I've always I did.
So save the end.
I'll save that.
Save the end, because I feel like that's.
But yeah, in terms of the good, I enjoyed that the story didn't go too streamlined and still kind of cut to outside perspectives and how it was affecting things in real time. Still through the experiences of our characters, but it was still evident in places in the writing, be it like traveling about and the weariness and the caution and the fact that the situation was really unfamiliar. But and the romance side of things, like, it's well written, I guess. Like, as you said, it seemed to convey yeah, as a very good first perspective of the kind of emotions you go through when you fall in love for the first time, like, and like how those feelings are unfamiliar to you, so you question them and you're like, oh, is this what it is? And so many times in my brain when I was reading it, like, I could hear that puppy love song going through my head. And they called it puppy. I was like, and it was equally apt that they were wolves. So
Yeah.
Either way, I liked that side of things. I didn't like certain bits. Obviously, like,
Okay, John, I'm gonna save that. Save
someone
that.
else
Not like
go.
Becca. What did you like about the book? Because you are more of the demographics, same as me, I guess.
Yeah.
More so than Johnny. But what did you think?
More so. What's funny, a little bit of backstory real quick. So I resisted the Twilight craze. I was in middle school. I was in that target demographic when it came out, as you probably were too. And I was hardcore against it. I shunned anything Twilight and anything like Twilight. I remember attempting to read Shiver when I was younger, probably 14 or so, and I just couldn't do it. And it was too steamy for me. I was a very chaste 14-year-old. So it was too steamy, so I put it down. It's funny picking it up now, you know, it's kind of 10 years later when I've had some life experience, and it was an enjoyable read. I did legitimately enjoy it, and I really loved the writing. I had always heard good things about Maggie Stiefvater. I'm probably going to say his name wrong, and it was nice to finally like read a full work of hers. I think I'd read short stories by her before and really enjoy her writing. I think that the strengths of this book are like definitely like the detailed description, the kind of like introspection with the characters. I would describe the story as like very slice of life, even though there is a plot, an overarching plot. Like so many of the scenes, I mean, the book probably could have been shorter, but I mean, it is what it is. But there's so many scenes where they're just kind of like going through their day, like, and just doing everyday things, which got like a little bit tedious sometimes, but in general, it just really grounded you in kind of this realistic portrayal of an otherwise very unrealistic circumstance. So I felt like you got to know the characters pretty well, and I liked that. I liked kind of the like the slow build. It was kind of, the romance was kind of a slow burn. Like, yeah, like there was like, you know, there was some kind of hot and heavy, obviously they liked each other right off the bat, that sort of thing, but like it still was like a lot of like Johnny said, like kind of caution and like, oh, is this really how I'm feeling? And it did feel like a lot of the emotions felt really believable, again, for the unbelievable circumstance that we're in. Like, I could suspend my disbelief just enough to enjoy the story. And I liked a lot of the really like flowery, I guess it's described as purple prose. I've heard it called purple prose, her writing. So I like it a little purpley, I've learned. So I liked a lot of just the real visual emphasis on visuals and kind of that sort of like five senses immersion that you get in a lot of scenes. So yeah, that's what I liked about it. And the story in general was not bad, honestly. It wasn't, again, like I said, my baseline was Twilight, so my standards going in were not that high, and I was pleasantly surprised with how much did make sense within the internal logic of the story, since you kind of have this magical realism thing. I liked it. I liked that it was kind of a ambiguous thing, that they kind of just rolled with that and let the story be what it was. So
I do think the story is just, I mean, for me personally, the story, as you just pointed out, and as Johnny just pointed out, I think like we need to take it with a grain of salt, in the sense of it was definitely inspired by that period of time. Like, you can tell this was like the Twilight era written during that period of time, and because of that, it does kind of harken back to that. But in general, it just feels like it was done slightly better, in the sense of, for me personally, I think the characters, like for me personally, what I really enjoyed was that the characters were so individualistic, like so spectacularly unique. You could clearly tell who had which like flaws and which strengths and weaknesses, etc. Like, for example, I really liked Shelby as a character. I think that the fact that Sean, I'm mixing it up with the Scorpio races, Sam has, you know, Shelby constantly a threat to his humanity, both figuratively and literally physically, when, you know, she attacks the house, and, you know, you can tell that she is trying to get him to become a wolf again. I thought that was a great addition. Like, you have this kind of antithesis to Sam's desire to be human. I really liked Beck. I thought Beck was a great character as well. Like, father figure. You had, I liked the fact that at first you were just like, oh, you get to see him from Sam's memories of him, and then all of a sudden you're faced with this dude with like 3 kids in the back of a truck and a shovel, and you're just like, shit, he like bit some people. And I think it was also realistic in a way how Sam jumped to that conclusion that he did. I feel like a lot of the times, especially now that we have cell phones and everything, it's really hard to make people miscommunicate believably, because every single time that somebody miscommunicates, you're just like, you could have texted, or like you could have called, or you could have done something. And I feel like the fact that miscommunication occurred was very believable from where they were each in that point in the story. It was very like, there was no reason for Sam to push the issue beyond being like, oh god, there are more wolves, like, you made wolves, of course you would have made more wolves. And it kind of like clicks together into place, like what was done to him, and he doesn't want to talk to Beck, and it was like, yeah, this makes sense. I like Jack. I thought Jack was a great show of, yes, he's a bully, but it is a desperate human who wants us to reverse whatever happened to him. Who I didn't like personally, character-wise though, which I guess is a great segue into what did we not like about this book. or like would have done better, etc. For me, that is Olivia, and that is actually for two reasons. One of them is very, very selfish. It's because she turns into a wolf at the end of the book because she's bitten by Jack, as we know. And I really wanted that to happen to Grace. And I was like, no, you're not the main character. Stop doing the thing that the main character is supposed to do. But I also thought it was like her, as good as the miscommunication was between Beck and Sam, the miscommunication between Olivia and Grace was slightly odd, in my opinion. Like, you're best friends, like you don't see each other. Yes, you're kept together by like their third friend, and they were, there was the entire talk that they were friends only because of this third friend that they had. But it just still seems so unbelievable that when you discover that there are werewolves and this dude tells you don't tell to your best friend, that you believe him over the girl who's been clearly obsessed to a certain degree with these wolves. I don't, maybe it's because that's not a decision that I would have made. I find that hard to relate to, like that type of decision making. But yeah, that was kind of me. And then there's the end, obviously, but we'll keep the end till the end. But what about you guys? What did you like dislike about, or would have changed about the series?
Let me think. It was so long ago when I read.
Yeah, it's true.
No, it's been a couple weeks, so I'm kind of trying to jog my own memory. I didn't like. I don't know. There was something about, and so I'm kind of conflicting with you, Nat. Sorry, with the way that Beck's character was set up and the reveal, like that he was, and that doing something wrong, and then Sam like was angry at him for it because it was a betrayal of his trust. And then later, like it tries to redeem him and be like, oh, like I'm doing it, like these people, like these kids consented to being bit, but I didn't, ask you. I made that mistake. Like it was like trying to redeem him almost too little, too late. I thought like like him, I felt like you were supposed to like him. I feel like he wasn't so bad after all. Like the thing that he was doing wasn't as bad as Sam thought. So I didn't understand, like I almost expected, and I think I would have maybe liked this better if Beck ended up being the villain. I mean, maybe it's a cliche to have your father figure that you look up to, etc., like betray you and then end up the bad guy. But that's where I thought it was going with the reveal that he had bitten these kids. And that would have been more compelling to me because it would have, I think it would have pushed Sam towards his humanity more. Not that he needed more reason, but like he was still tied to his pack. Like he still had loyalty towards it, towards them, and was warring within himself for, majority of the book because he didn't want to just leave them. He didn't want to leave Beck. Yeah, that kind of bothered me personally.
I do agree with you, actually. Like I think that's the thing. Like I really like Beck as a character in what he represents, but I do agree that at the end that was kind of, it felt like it was a bit of a really hard backpedal that you weren't really expecting. Like if it was a little bit of redemption, like that you tried to kind of veer that in that direction, that would have been fine. But here it was like, no, but everything is absolved because they consented, and it's like, well,
it's not a good thing. Like it's still not a good thing, and I don't think it's ever fully established, which I don't know if it's supposed to be, because werewolves kind of, anytime you're dealing with a cryptid, there's these like pros and cons to their existence, whether they're a good thing or a bad thing, whether they're a monster or not. And you're kind of left with this question mark of, are we supposed to like wolves, or are we supposed to not? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. And so the other thing that bothered me, which I think is a major criticism of the books, is like Grace's infatuation with Sam as a wolf.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's
I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it out there because it's kind of the elephant in the room, and I know it bothers people, and I think that Maggie did the best that she could to establish, like, to keep any weird taboos out of it. but it's still there a little
It's
bit,
still
just
a
a little
little
bit.
weird.
Yeah.
Still a little weird, in the same way that Twilight is still a little weird, that he's, you know,
Twilight
dead
is
and
a
100-year-old
lot weird.
vampire.
Twilight
Yeah,
is a
like
lot weird.
you cannot separate that. You do have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to decide, you know, how far you want to push your paranormal romance tolerance, I guess. But
Yeah.
because it's already a fantastical thing, you're already dealing with things that don't exist and that shouldn't exist, and it's already an unnatural like pair just by virtue of the genre. So like, how are you going to handle it from there? But I did think that.
I was gonna say, I just to jump in, because maybe it'll help for your next next bit of this discussion, because you said that it was the Grace to Sam. Honestly, for me, it was the Sam to Grace. I found it a bit weird as him as a wolf, like standing outside of her window constantly, and like her be like, I understand that it was supposed to depict that she was the only like tether to his humanity, or like one of the strongest tethers of his humanity, as we see at the end. But like, it do be a bit weird though. Like, especially when he says that most of the things fall away, and you then get descriptions where it's like, well, yeah, it's like Becca, you just said, like it's a very, I think, fine line to walk, and Maggie did the best she could without making it like the taboo kind of interpretation of this. But it was still, let me put it this way, because there is an issue with that, because it then makes, when they were like, oh no, we've been together for like 6 years now, it's like, no you haven't, like you saw each other, like you were like wolf and girl for like the last 6 years. You were not together for the last 6 years. That is not how that works. And I think basically there was even like a paragraph in the book, and I think when I read that I was like, oh my god, like when I was younger that didn't really, I didn't clock in on that as much, but now it's just like, ooh, it's a little bit of ooh. So yeah, that's for me it was the opposite. I think Sam to Grace was equally like weird in that aspect. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted.
No, you hit it on the head. Like I think that pretty much sums it up. Like it could have been a whole lot worse again, and it was just, I think she could have reeled in some of the like, in both perspectives, some of their like feelings towards the other before they had met each other as humans. Like, you sometimes you're not really sure, but that oh, we've been together for 6 years comment almost implicates that they're admitting to themselves that they were in love with each other as two different species. And that, to me, that's crossing the line. Like, she can love this wolf in like a way like, oh, this is like such a majestic animal, and like I have a special connection to it, in the same way you might love a pet, I guess. And then when she sees him as a human, like that whole mindset gets rewritten. And that's fine to me. And again, like it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it still towed that line of, okay, was she in love with a dog? Let's put it
out. Was she in love with the dog?
Was she in love with a dog? Like it's open to interpretation, honestly, and what you're comfortable with in your books. So it didn't bother me to an extent where I was like angry and felt, betrayed and offended, but like it was still weird. It was still just a teeny bit uncomfortable.
I mean, let's put it this way, I would not give it to like all the Midwestern Americans right now, like a Midwestern, like Bible Belts American, like, here you go, because I feel like that would be interpreted like way off mark. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't think it was a deal breaker for me. Like I mean, clearly I do still really enjoy the book, but out of her books in general, it's definitely, for the romance part, like it definitely doesn't sit as my top romance of hers. I think all of her other romances, which are just between people, are a lot more believable, because all of the emotions that you can prescribe to the wolf side, like the human side, you don't have this like questioning essentially going on. That's my hot take. But yeah, What about you, Johnny? You've been sitting, I know you're not the prescribed demographic, but you can't get away from discussing.
I was disappointed in the level of reasoning they gave for making more wolves. Like they gave a half-assed explanation, to use a popular phrase, but
Mhm.
it it wasn't enough for me. It didn't redeem Beck's character. It didn't make me like the plight of being a wolf. I was like, I can understand it's weird, but like, oh, you need to make more because the pack and run out of wolves. And I was like, well, but why? Why do you need more wolves? You're all people. You all experience being people clearly for most of the year, and then you become a wolf for a little bit. Do you have a wolf culture? Is there something that needs preserving? Do you have like a wolf library, a wolf bank? Is there like a little museum of wolf in a den somewhere where you've got wolf art and all sorts? Like, what is there to preserve that you're worried about losing? It kind of plays off like there's some sort of like if you enjoyed being a wolf, great. But why would you then put that on other people to roll the dice and see if they enjoyed it as well? No, it's kind of like putting someone on a random plane, and that
Let me
plane might
try and
end up in
find
like
it.
Jamaica or something, and it'll be a really nice little island holiday that they might like, or they could end up somewhere else and they'd hate it, but you don't make that cool. It's you. And so with some bits, it kind of conveyed that they consented to be a wolf. And I was like, okay, well, fair enough, but still, why? Why would you want to? The process that it describes, like once, we only got it like once in a good detail, but it was like the description of Jack turning into a werewolf. And they weren't werewolves, they're not like these horrendous, like half human looking things that they describe, but it described it as like being a placenta covering a baby or something. And I was like, oh God, this sounds nightmarish. And then suddenly, whoop, I'm a dog, you know. um, I kind of like the fact they were wolves and not, as I said, freakish half human hybrids, but like that can't be fun. Like it'd be the kind of thing that you'd be like, be nice to do for a day, maybe. Who knows? Be weird. If you knew that there was a slap bang end to it, then I could see people being more eager to be like, ah, yeah, bite me. But the fact that they spend all winter as something that's going to get chased away, from most, and they're in the Midwest. They're not the Midwest. I think it was described as like, I can't remember what state it was now. They actually
Yeah,
gave.
where were they?
I think it was North America, like North America, like on the
Maybe
near the Great
Minnesota.
Lakes. Yeah.
Yeah, or possibly even what state am I thinking? Montana. It might have even been Montana.
But it's like,
I think it was Montana, yeah.
but there's loads
Yeah.
of farms, everything out there. So you're gonna be persecuted. You're gonna be running most of your life, like of this winter, and you're gonna be cold. You're not gonna have a fire. You don't have opposable thumbs. You don't have anything. You're just gonna live and eat deer. So
Don't wolves hibernate in the winter? Don't
not
they hibernate
really.
in the winter? No. But
Kind
like
of.
food is more scarce, right?
They're not like bears. Yeah, they just have to
right, okay.
scrounge and they eat lots of fatty foods up to winter, and then they kind of scrounge. Either way,
Okay.
it's kind of like I don't understand why people would want and consent, but fair enough if you do. But then it's not a good enough reason that most of the people that you're biting don't consent, and arguably you've driven them to be terrified. And the ending, which I won't discuss, we'll do that together. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
I sympathize with the plight of those involved, but oh, it's just an odd situation. But yeah, no, that I don't have many major gripes with the book. I think that
I
there's not
found
much.
it. I
I
found
can't
I
think of anything I
found
would change.
I found both of the bits. Okay, so for Beck's part, which we were talking about, and Johnny just aptly pointed out to do with like the changing and stuff like that, and Becca coming back to Beck. Yeah. So we have, it's like so it was like, why did you change anyway, I definitely saw the quote here, but it was like, why did I change Sam? And it was like, just because I was a selfish bastard without a soul. And then he goes and talks about like how he wanted a child with his wife who had cancer, and then he saw Sam, and he, you know, looked already like a wolf with his like pigeon parents who like didn't know what they had, type of thing, which is like, dude, that's really effed up. Like, you should not have done that.
That's
Like,
really effed up.
yeah, but coming back to why Beck needed more wolves, and this is what the book says, so this is the reason, which I agree with Johnny, that it's half-assed as hell. He saw my eyes looking at the different colored collars at his neck, and he nodded. We need this house. The pack needs this house, and the pack needs protectors still able to change. You already know, we can't rely on humans. We're the only ones who can protect us. And it's like, I understand that you need the house, but you had a wife who was not a wolf, who knew about it. Can't you find one person that you know is like, I'm sure that among like the 8 of you, at least there is somebody that you can like call in a favor for, like a brother or a cousin or something, and just be like, look, this is the house of like my dead ass grandmother that I want to like upkeep. Could you pay the rent on this like every single year? I'm gonna wire you the money, and like there's money in this bank account, and then just die out. Like, it's so far, at least from this book, and I don't actually remember if it's addressed in book 2 or 3. I think it is. There is really no good reason for why the wolves should exist. Like, as Becca pointed out, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Nobody knows. Yeah. Anyway, now let's get on to the ending though. So what did you guys think? Becca, let's go with you, since Johnny just had his
piece.
Moment. Yeah.
Need more of this.
Oh yeah, the injecting the cure being to inject one with meningitis is probably so the most contrived thing I've heard in a long time. And I wanted to, like, I was already, my belief was already, disbelief was already suspended enough that at the time, belief was suspended. That too, that I read it and I was like, oh, okay, cool, a solution. But upon further reflection, and as I was like talking it out with my John, who I always rant about books too, poor guy, I was like, that was a really stupid solution. And it killed one of the characters and almost killed another. But again, how come one died? How come Jack died and Sam didn't? Like, what's the logic? And also just the risk factor, like the risk factor. And I understand that it was like, oh, like if we die, it's better than having to live this life. Well, I don't know if that's actually ever what they say, like, but I'll take the risk basically is what Jack decides. But like, it's just, oh my gosh, like, why? I know that that's not the ending. That's more of like the climactic scene, honestly. The ending, where, you know, Sam walks out of the woods and he's a human. How did he survive the meningitis, first of all? Do you have just a really strong immune system? Did the wolf blood actually help or something? Like, I don't know if these are addressed.
I think because I have the entire series, from my vague recollection, it is addressed at the book 2. Okay. Like, you know, you get in and you're just like, how is this possible? But I don't remember personally that I was ever like fully satisfied with it. That's why I wouldn't say this is my favorite series even though I really like book 1, because I feel like book 2 and 3 build on something which it doesn't have like a solid base. Again, meningitis as a cure. The problem is that I then have, which I could ask myself and I can ask you, is like, what would you write as the cure? Because we know that you need a lot of internal heat. How do you solve this?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not the author of this. I'm sure she had to think this through and find a logical conclusion. I don't think it's the worst thing ever. Like, it was just such there's just a lot of stupidity involved in that being the solution. But like, I don't know what I would have done. Like, what do? You just stick them in a sauna and turn it up on high and just pray? I kind of thought grace would be the cure somehow, but that seemed too fantastical. But then they hint at the fact that the reason why she didn't turn is because she was like locked in a car by her negligent father. So I thought that like a hot space would be enough, like literally a sauna would be enough. But then they also like they shoot that down with the whole, well, if we go to a hot climate, like you have to get so hot like you're almost boiling your own blood, like 200 degrees, something that a human really can't survive. And that, like, again, that's pushing it, but we're talking about werewolves here. Like, that might, and maybe Maggie thought of that, maybe she tried to write it, maybe it didn't work. I don't know. Like, again, there could have been a lot worse solutions that she could have come up with, but it was a little bit of a hard sell for me, just a little bit. And I think what made it a hard sell is that, well, I personally don't plan on reading the rest of the series, so I kind of have to just stick with the ending and just take it as it is and be like, okay, he survived it, Jack didn't, cool, I guess, power love, let's go.
Yeah. That's basically it in a nutshell. It's just inject that meningitis. What can go wrong? It just felt like such an odd, contrived thing to do. Like, clearly they were like, you were in a feverish state. What is one of the many ways that we could trigger for you? Oh, meningitis. Actually quite deadly. I don't know. It didn't make sense.
Maybe there was something like, I think maybe there was slightly more a believable disease that they could have used which causes fevers. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of infections that give you a fever. Like, you don't need to go straight for meningitis, which has like a massive fatality rate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think she wrote herself into a corner where she was like, we spend time down south, but then we started turning at like the aircon blowing on us type of thing. But then it's also like, okay, well, as a pack, couldn't like the people who were still human and like firmly human take the wolves, transport them as wolves, just literally. Beck's a lawyer. I'm a burial, but he probably could have pulled some strings and like ship them down south, like somewhere into the jungle.
Yeah, just go to the equator.
And then wait for them to turn back. Because clearly, like, you have some sort of, like, not all of them were, at the end of their switching lifetime. And then just wait for them to switch back and then see, like, if they would turn again, or like, okay, you turned and now we're going to put you into like a super, super hot space. Like, I do think there was something more logical there. I think the drama introduced by Jack was kind of what pushed them into like, we need a solution now because of Jack threatening them. And I think I don't envy her job, the way that she gave herself the plot, which is like, make fantasy but root it in some sort of reality. And I think that's always a very, very difficult thing to do regardless, right? Like, right now I have a story that's been sitting in my head for a very long time. And one of the things that I thought initially was to make this world a like parallel to Earth, but I started running into like so many problems for that because, okay, well, everybody has cell phones. Like, how do you get rid of that? Right? The internet. How do you nullify this? How do you nullify like people appearing and nobody noticing it with all the surveillance that we have, you know? So it's kind of like, okay, you said it in the past, or do you like deal with this by some sort of means? So I would say it's getting harder and harder to write about magical realism in today's world just because of the existence of the internet and, you know, the globalization that has already happened. So I would say she did the best, like I would assume she did the best she could. Does it make for a good book? That's you know, debate, or like a good end. That's a debatable like a debatable thing. But another thing that last thing that I want to say, Becca, actually, and that's for you like who said, oh, I didn't want to, like, don't want to read the rest of the series. I personally remember when I found out that there was book 2 and 3, that I was like, this is a series. When I was 15 or 16 when I read it the first time, I was like, this is a series. Because to me it kind of actually was just like, just leave it there, you know. He walks out of the woods, it's a very open-ended like ending. You don't need to, you can extend that, or like extend that disbelief to as far as you could take it, and you're just like, all right, he survives, but that's it, this is the happy ending, like somehow he survives, they're happy, like they will figure it out type of thing. And then you get 2 and 3, and if you ever decide to, I will buddy read it with you. Like I 100% am fine just buddy reading it with you, because from what I remember, book 3 has some like crazy stuff happening in it that's like, okay, we're like, I remember a helicopter at one point, so it's really
Oh my gosh.
random. Or at least the way that I remember it.
Yeah.
So just let me know. We can always arrange this.
Yeah, one day I might get brave, but when I was reading it, like I knew it was a series, but like I feel like, and I know this happens a lot, she probably wrote it intending for it to be a standalone. But then its unprecedented success, you know, gave her a reason to write more books, because it really felt pretty wrapped up. I mean, sure, the ending's a little bit ambiguous, but I was satisfied. I could say, okay,
yeah,
like I can live with this. And then I made the mistake of like going on Goodreads and reading some reviews of like the sequel, and
oh
you know,
no,
and,
oh no,
which is always a bad idea, but it was hilarious. But it also just like made me feel like, yeah, right now I'm good. But the reviews I read, basically the consensus was that they just had to kind of contrive conflict between them to propel the story forward. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good with just the happy ending right now. And I guess yeah, that could change for me one day. Who knows? You know, this time
hit
next
me
year
up
I
if
might
it does.
right. But I am happy to just consider this a standalone for now, and just, you know, the ending be what it is.
Maybe next autumn, you know, we'll continue. It's like part 2, like it'll come back.
Right. Yeah.
I did think it went full soap opera near the end, like some of the more drastic moments of just like, I could just hear the Curb Your Enthusiasm sort of theme in the background, like just the bit where they're like driving along in the van, or and like they're sitting up front, and like I think it was either Sam or Grace was singing a song, and like one of them was listening, and they're like not paying attention to driving, and they hit a deer or something, and then the window smashes.
Yeah,
It was at that moment that I was like, I could hear like like it was at this moment like he knew he fucked up. Like I was just like, oh my god, this is like the plot of like a 30-minute episode on television. Just like, that's the cliffhanger, that's where you leave it. I was just
yeah,
such a typical way of upping the stakes of what was a pretty like normal situation of just driving. Like,
yeah.
I've hit a deer once.
How
and I
was
have
it?
made many hundreds of journeys and it wasn't that bad. It was a bit
doesn't always
scary.
break the windshield. Yeah.
They're a bit dumb. It was a little mug jack. But no, it just it didn't do much damage to the like. But in this situation, it flopped up onto the car windscreen and broke the windscreen, and oh no, now the car's not warm anymore. What good heavens, what shall we do? It's
Yeah.
just felt a little contrived.
Yeah. But again, like I think it's just, it comes back to her earlier work. Like it's an earlier work syndrome, which for me, honestly, gives me great hope for my own writing, just because it's really nice to see authors progress. You know, not all of them are Tolkien who have like masses and like amazing writing straight from the beginning. And it's just, you can definitely see her improvement, I think, over the course of her later series. And I definitely think that the Raven cycle, which is the 4 books, is better as a series. I mean, it definitely has a much larger following, if not only because there are 4 boys and there's a lot of shipping going on around there, but just in writing as well. Like I think it's a bit less contrived, surprisingly, for a magical realism story. But yeah, that's my take. But I think unless anybody else has anything else to add, then that's, you know, us. Our comeback is done for this review. So if anybody has, if anybody has stuck around until this point, if you've read Shiver, what was your opinion on it? Or, you know, do you agree? Do you disagree with any of our opinions? Would love to hear it. Always really nice when somebody actually shares their opinions on the book in the comments. And yeah, we are going to be next reading, I think, because we're all starting to get more busy as time progresses with anyone. It might not be a monthly thing, but it will be like maybe a bi-monthly thing. Our next book is, Johnny, what is it?
It is The Salt Path by Raynor Wynn, and it's a little small bestseller. It's a non-fiction story of 2 people who have received some particularly bad news, but then making the best of it, and it's their own little personal journey. And it's quite nice. It's a shorter book, a shorter read. It's probably about 300 pages, but I have heard nothing but good things. I've only read a little bit so far, and I like it. So
there you go. So if you want to join us, The Salt Path is the next book that we're going to read and talk about. You can join us in the Discord server, which link down below. I will link Becca's channel as always at the end and in the description, so you can check out her lovely channel. And yeah, that is it for us today. We will see you in the next one with The Salt Path. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.